If you want to know exactly what's going on with the local Southern Oregon real estate market, you're in the right place. I'm going to share the latest market information with you, and more importantly, what it means to you as a homeowner or potential buyer or seller. So if you're thinking of buying, selling, or investing here in Southern Oregon, this is definitely the video you want to see. Hey, I'm Brian Simmons. I'm a licensed real estate agent here with eXp Realty in Southern Oregon, and I would love to hear your questions about the market. So please don't hesitate to drop a comment or even reach out to me directly at 541-954-7758. I'm going to share the latest market information with you today for the last week, which is ending July 11th, 2023, which I just reviewed, and I'm really excited to share because I found some pretty important information about the timing of buying or selling here in Southern Oregon. So I'm going to get into that, and I'm going to answer very directly the question of should you wait to buy or sell in Southern Oregon. So let's cut to the chase and get right to the data. And I'm going to look over at my monitor here and tell you what's going on. So for the week ending July 11th, like I just said, 2023, looking at Jackson and Josephine counties of Southern Oregon, and we're only looking at single family residential homes here. We had 1,112 total inventory on the market active as of this morning, which is July 12th. We had 111 new listings hit the market over the past week. We had 161 price changes, which both of those are up. Last week, we only had 87 new listings hit the market, which was crazy low, and I think that was because of the 4th of July week. But yeah, crazy low last week, and it was nice to see that bounce back to 111 new listings this week. So I would expect to see that continue to bounce back, though, and even go up higher, probably into the 120s next week is my guess. Price changes were 82 last week, and they about doubled to 161 this week. So that's not a surprise, again, because of the 4th of July week. I think a lot of people probably waited to do any sort of new listing activity or just a price. Most people just waited on that. Makes a lot of sense there. We did see 28 come back on the market. 101 went pending, which is very consistent. Last week was 102. The week before was 114. The week before was 112. So we've been nice and stable in that 100, 110 range for several weeks now, and even going back actually into May, we've been right around that same number. So that's nice to see that consistency. Shows that the buyer demand is still there despite the fluctuations in rates that we've been seeing, and that's nice. So I really like to see that. That's one of my favorite metrics to look at, is that number of pending transactions that are new every single week. So 101 of those did go pending. We saw 74 closed transactions, which is down a little bit. We were 81 last week, 92 the week before. And again, if you've watched my videos, you know that what I usually say about that number is that it's more a representation of what happened like 4 to 6 weeks ago than it is a representation of what's going on today. So 4 to 6 weeks ago, we had a week where we were only 90 pending transactions. So that's probably why we have only 74 closed this week. Some fell through, and that kind of explains why it's a little bit of a lower number there. And we saw 36 that were either expired, withdrawn, or canceled. So that's pretty standard. That number fluctuates quite a bit. So what was interesting and something that did jump out to me is of all of those new listings, we had 111, right? Of those 111, 17 of them are already pending. Okay. And of those 17, only four are above $500,000. All right. So that's pretty significant. So that means that 13 of them are under 500. So they're primarily in the 3s and 4s. So again, like I've if you've watched the videos, this is something I've talked about several times. I don't report on it every week, but I do every couple weeks, and it's been very consistent. That number where it's been a significant portion of the new listings that have gone pending very quickly, they tend to be under $500,000. And so that's something to be aware of if you're thinking about buying or selling in that range. Number one, things just still go pretty quickly in that range, or they certainly can if they're priced right and they're looking good. They can definitely go fast. So whether you're a buyer or a seller, that's just something to be aware of in that range. And if you're out of that range, you're above 500, things might, take a little bit more time. But again, if they're priced right and looking really good, then I've seen plenty of those go very quickly as well. So buyers are still buying. That's the key. One of the things I did want to talk about today is that there's some news that came out this morning. Again, it's July 12th. There's some news that came out this morning about CPI inflation. And what came out was that the inflation rate year over year, so from June of 2022 to June of 2023, the inflation rate was 3%. And that's great, I think, because the year prior, looking at June 21 to June 22, that change was 9%, and that was the peak of inflation. And so we've seen all of these changes about mortgage rates going from 3 to 7. That's all a result of inflation going crazy like it did at 9%. The Fed made all these changes to their Fed rate, brought that way up to combat inflation, and that's what kind of led us into this position where we're at right now, where we have 7% mortgage rates. So it's nice to see that the things that they've been doing have been effective, and we're now at 3% instead of at 9%. So the target is 2%, and so what that means to me is that the end is in sight. Who knows how long it'll take to go from 3% to 2% to where the Fed feels good about things. Maybe it takes another 6 months. I don't know. Maybe, I would suspect it'd be something like that. Probably by the first of the year, as we get into 2024, we'll start to see interest rates be, I don't think back in the threes, but I think they'll be probably in the fives somewhere in that first part of 2024 is my guess. Okay. So where would that put us for the spring season? That's the thing that I think is really important for you as a potential buyer or seller, or even just as a homeowner or investor or whatever it is. Anybody with an interest in the local real estate market, it's something to consider. Where will we be in the spring? And I've heard from many people that the expectation is that the Fed gets this, inflation thing under control. That then will lead to, their rate coming down, which will lead to mortgage rates coming down, which will put us in, the first part of next year with lower mortgage rates. The issue with that, number one, I think that's great. Like, I think that's a really, really good thing. The issue with that is that we already have a shortage of inventory. We only have 1,112 homes on the market currently today. Historically, the market kind of peaks in terms of inventory in like August, and then it starts to go down into the first of the year. So right, like January, it kind of like hits its low, and then it starts to kind of climb up again as more people start listing their homes. So the reason that's important is because you have to project into January. If we get January, February, where we're at our lowest of inventory and we're maybe at like 700 homes on the market or something, again, maybe it's even less than that. We were at 700 and something this year. If we're at that point where that's crazy low for 300,000 people between Jackson and Josephine counties, 700 and something homes, that's crazy low. If we get into that position and rates go down to where people that have been sitting on the sidelines because they don't want to pay 7 or 7.25, where they now feel like they can come back into the market, there is going to be a huge flood of buyers, okay, with no additional inventory. So what does that do when you increase the demand and you don't do anything to the supply? That increases the price, okay? That's what it does. It pushes the price up. So what we'll see, in my opinion, is if this all comes together and we have this kind of perfect storm, you're going to see home values absolutely skyrocket in spring of next year. So, and again, for that to happen, you're going to need to see mortgage rates probably in the fives. Okay. If they go below fives, it's going to be chaos. But if it's in the fives, I think it's going to be still like home values are going to go up. So what does that mean then if that is to happen? Okay. And that's what every sign that I can see kind of points towards that being what happens. And I don't have a crystal ball, obviously, that could or could not happen, but that's what I would suspect. And that's not just based on what I think I want to have happen or anything. That's looking at data, talking to other professionals and those sorts of things and kind of forming my opinion on that. So if that happens, what does that mean to you as a buyer or as a seller? Okay. And should you wait? So as a buyer, what I would think is if you expect home values to go up, All right. If we're looking at the spring season, we're expecting them to go up. And let's say they go up by 10% in a year, which is totally doable because it did that back in 2021 when we had really low inventory and really low rates and everything went crazy. 10% was what we saw, and even a little higher in some cases. But if that's what you saw as a buyer, if you buy a $400,000 home, that means in a year, 10% of that is $40,000. You can create $40,000 potentially in wealth in a year with that. So does it make sense to not buy because you're afraid of a higher mortgage rate, like a 7% rate, when you could potentially earn a 10% gain on your money? Does that make sense? Right? So in my mind, it does. I would say spend that money on the mortgage rate now so that you can create that wealth and catch this boom that I believe we're going to have. And I believe very strongly in that. So I would advise anybody who's thinking about buying to buy, or I guess I should say this. There's more, everybody has unique situations in that. So I would advise you to talk to me and we can talk about the specifics of your situation. But in general, it makes a lot of sense for most buyers to buy now despite the high rate and catch this boom that I believe we're going to have. And then when rates, if you buy at 7.25% or 7, and rates come down to 5, 5.5, you get that boom and you refinance, and you have your cake and eat it too. So I really think that's the play if you're a buyer. I think the timing is great to buy right now. Okay, and that's exactly why. So what about on the seller side though? Okay. The seller side is a little bit more complex. The way to think about the seller side is that you can wait and create your wealth, on the appreciation of your current home, right? So instead of selling, you just stay where you're at and you catch that 10% gain on your current home. Or you can sell your current home now and you can create that wealth on the appreciation of your new home. And the problem with waiting is that you're going to be then in a situation where it's going to be a more competitive market. You're going to have less inventory, and you're going to have a hard time finding a home. And I don't know if maybe somebody or you personally were trying to find a home back in 2021, but we had 350 or right around 300 homes on the market, again, for 300,000 people. It was chaos. It was every single home had, 10 offers on it, and they were going way above asking price. And I had a lot of buyers that I was working with who were like, you know what, this is just too crazy for us. We don't want to buy right now because we're getting outbid on everything. And that was the market. So think about that. Think about, do you want to be in a market like that where you see a home, you fall in love, and you get outbid because somebody else was willing to pay 50 grand over the asking price? That was what was happening. That could definitely happen again. And so I would just advise you, if you're thinking about that, I would say, if it were me personally, if I were thinking about selling, I would sell now. Because there's inventory to buy. Okay, I would sell now, or I would find a place that I like, and I would catch that appreciation on that next home. And then I would just refinance, like I said, if you're a buyer. I think that's the strategy that makes a lot of sense in my mind. So to answer the question very, very directly, does it make sense, or I guess I should say, should you wait to buy or sell in Southern Oregon? That's really the question. No, you should not wait to buy or sell in Southern Oregon. It makes a ton of sense to buy or sell right now because of what I expect to see over the next 12 months. Okay. I really think that we're going to see mortgage rates come back down in the first part of 2024, maybe even before that. And I think the spring season of 2024, which is historically and traditionally the busiest time of year in real estate, I believe you are going to see an absolute just wild seller's market where home values are through the roof and competition's happening and all these things, and it's going to be crazy. So that's what I think is going to happen. That's really all I got for you today. So if you'd like to make sure you see these market updates every week, just click that subscribe button down here somewhere on this screen. Click the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so that you don't miss out on the next one, and that you can stay informed on all the happenings of the local housing market here in Southern Oregon. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next week. Have a great one.